The Spurs have a packed roster, which means somebody or some people have to go.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs. We're here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Kansas City, San Antonio. Glad to have you back. We are discussing the Spurs roster today. In case you didn't know, the Spurs roster is pretty packed now. 20 players as of now. Somebody has to go. Also, what's been going on with the Spurs lately? We'll catch you up with some news and notes. And what about all that money the Spurs are sitting on? Who is helping me today? He is the man, the myth, the legend, the guy who hasn't been on Locked On Spurs for a while. Just, conflict scheduling. But he's here. He's a busy man. So we're going to make it short. He is Michael Jimenez with San Antonio Sports Star. Mike, welcome back to Locked On Spurs. And by the way, I heard you're going to try out for the Austin Spurs. Is that true?
Yeah, I hear that's the tryouts are coming out. So if they need a 5'7" power forward, I'm their guy.
I like how you said power forward for 5'7". That was hilarious. Yeah, we're going to be discussing all that and much, much more. But how you been?
Doing well, man. Just having a good time here at the station right now, getting ready for a show. But anything for Jeff Garcia.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, as you heard the man right there, he is short on time. So we're going to make this short and sweet with Mr. Jimenez. By the way, check out his show, Halftime on San Antonio Sports Star. He's going to brag about his show and much, much more later on. Let's dive into it. Mike, the Spurs are packed with players right now. 20 players on the roster. They've made recent additions / re-signings. Joe Wieskamp, he's back. Keita Stop, he's there. Jordan Hall. Tommy Kuzi. The list goes on and on. When you're looking at this roster, Mike, who do you suspect will be the odd man out?
It could be any of like 10 players, to be honest with you. I compared this roster to the movie Major League. Remember in that movie where the Cleveland Indians fans were there taking a look at the roster in the newspaper and they read all the names and they're like, who the heck are these guys? That is this roster right here, because if you show this roster to just an average Spurs fan, maybe not a diehard, but an average Spurs fan, they're going to take a look at all the names on there and go, I don't recognize half of these players. So it's a very interesting world that we live in. But as far as the ones that are on the chopping block, I take a look at players like Keita Bates-Diop.
Yeah.
I know the Spurs recently got Alamodome Johnson as well. That's another one. I don't know why people are looking at Trey Jones. I keep hearing that rumor, but I'm not buying it.
I'm not buying it either.
So it's kind of interesting, but there's a lot of names out there that the Spurs could let go. They obviously need to let go of 3, but when they got Joe Wieskamp to a 2-year deal for $4 million, the first thing I thought of there, Jeff, when I saw that was that's trade bait. And then you hear those rumors from Nick Wright, FS1. Oh, they came back again about Westbrook. I think the Spurs might be holding on to a couple of players for the potential of a trade.
I'm right there with you. On my list of players possibly get cut is Keita Bates-Diop, Wieskamp, and Johnson. Now, not to say they can't finagle a way to send them to Austin. That could still happen. Or somebody gets dry skin for the entire year and you got to put them on the injury reserve list. But those are my 3, I guess, names that I have on my list that who could be out of a San Antonio uniform next season. I don't know where this Trey Jones rumor and fans are chatting about, because there's no way. The Spurs are thin on point guards. And as of right now, Michael, that's the battle right now. Who's it going to be, Primo or Trey Jones next season as far as the starting point guard? Your thoughts?
Well, if it was based on who would win a boxing match, it would be Primo, because those photos that came out of him on social media, I think it was on Instagram, dude, that guy is jacked, man. The young Primo that we remember, the scrawny guy, he's gone.
Yeah, he's gone. That's gone.
He looks like Keldon Johnson. He's just a big body point guard out there. I find that to be a very intriguing wrinkle to the whole season because, it's one thing to be young, but if you're going to be pushed around, you don't want to be pushed around physically. So that's the thing, is that he's getting bigger, and that's what we want from players, right? I saw Devin Vassell as well in the gym, and he looks a lot bulkier too. So I would say that each Spur is gaining muscle, which is pretty interesting. They're young guys, man. But as far as
Yeah.
like the point guard position, though, you take a look at Trey Jones over Primo. I think Jones is probably going to be the one that's going to have the most stability on the court. He's somebody who can bring it on both ends. I like what he does. Shorter player, though. Primo, though, is the one that the Spurs have pinned their hopes on because they used such a high draft pick on him. It's one of those things. The draft capital was used on Primo. They've got to play him.
They do have a plan, and yes, you're right. He has been working out with Hulk and Thor. He has added so much size. By the way, must be nice to be 19 years old and be able to pack on that kind of muscle like that. Remember those days, or maybe you don't, Jimenez, because I hear you can pack on muscle pretty fast, even at your age.
Oh, dude, man, back in the day, we'll never be 19, 20 years old again, man. I remember running a mile in like 5.5 minutes. I
Thanks.
mean, my chubby butt now is could barely break 10 these days. But yeah, it's fascinating because these guys that we're drafting are so young that not only are they bulking up, but in some respects, some of them are also literally getting taller because they're so young that they're still growing. So it's an interesting world that we live in with the Spurs because we're not used to this type of situation where we don't know half the team and we don't know exactly what we're going to get from some of these players.
Yeah. I'm with you when the Wieskamp was re-signed. That's definitely trade fodder right there. He's a throw-in. He's a young guy, stretch the floor, guard, forward, combo guy. So he would definitely be a nice little addition if they're going to still flip. And I know we're going to talk about the money situation in a few minutes, but I'm assuming Michael Jimenez is still on the board of this team may not be done flipping some of these players.
No, I mean, why should we? I mean, to bottom out, you need to bottom out, and that means get rid of certain things. The Spurs, showed that they're going to bottom out when they traded DeJounte Murray, and that's what we're doing right now. The Spurs have two very, very attractive contracts out there in the sense that you have, Jakob Poeltl in an expiring deal. Josh Richardson's also an expiring deal. Romeo Langford is an expiring deal. So you take a look at what the Spurs have going on there. They have that, right? So they can assume a bad contract if that's what they want to do. It's a placeholder when you take on someone's big contract, especially if it's one that's going to be gone at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that big of a deal. You have to spend the money anyway. There's a minimum salary cap for crying out loud. Spurs can't just say we're just going to save all this money. The Spurs have to spend money because it's mandated that they do so. So the thing is that when you spend that money, you don't want it to be on a long-term thing, a long-term deal. The Spurs have had that before where they've had lingering contracts where it's like, man, when is this thing over? Pau Gasol was one of those contracts. So if the Spurs were to take on a Russell Westbrook type of contract, it may not even be him. It'd just be somebody else that is on the outs with their team. It's really a placeholder. The Spurs can look at that as, we didn't trade for that player. What we traded for was his salary space this upcoming summer.
Before we get to our next segment, so just refresh my memory. You said you have Alize Johnson and then Bates Diop. And who's your third guy that's possibly on the outs?
I think you and I are on the same page when it comes to Wieskamp.
Okay.
I like Wieskamp's game, though, man. He averaged 17 points per game in the G League last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, then we're on the same page. Yeah, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Yeah, well, there you have it. Yes, Spurs fans, the Spurs are stacked with players. You're going to make for an interesting training camp with kind of sort of around the corner. So get ready for that. But yeah, expect a lot of movement towards the end of that roster / bench next season. Possibly see a lot of these guys playing in the Austin Spurs uniform or maybe on the IR. When we get back, Michael Jimenez is going to give us his opinion about why the Spurs are still sitting on all that cash. And by the way, thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. Free and available wherever you get podcasts. I want to talk to you about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your sports betting needs. Find your favorite sports, events, and the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including MLB, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. Look, they got you covered. Head there right now. You got a cell phone, you got a laptop, you got a computer. Go there today. Use that mobile device. Learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back with Michael Jimenez. He is with San Antonio Sports Star. Follow him on Twitter at MikeESPNSA. And we're catching up on all things silver and black. And we're going to catch you up right now on the Spurs financial situation. You know, Michael, they really haven't made a big move where they need to tap into that cash they're sitting on. Sure, they re-signed KJ. He got himself a little hefty pay raise. You mentioned Wieskamp. But they still have, I think, the first or the second most amount of money for any NBA team right now. Why do you think they're still sitting on this money?
Because they're waiting to be the third team in a blockbuster trade somewhere. You know, where the Spurs can basically, someone can basically rent out the Spurs cap space, if you will, and give draft capital in return. There's bad contracts out there. You know, a couple of years ago it was John Wall, and right now we're looking at Russell Westbrook. And there's other bad contracts out there. We think of bad contracts and automatically think of Westbrook because it's the most high-profile one. But the thing is that if the Spurs want to develop draft capital, they need to offer up their cap space, rent it out for 1 year. Yes, we'll take your bad contract. Please send it with a first-round draft pick. That's what the Spurs are doing there with that. And if they don't spend that money, there's a minimum cap there where the players would then have to like get a raise, if you will, for the year.
Yeah.
But the Spurs right now are just sitting in a very, very interesting position because other teams have made bad moves. Other teams are trying to compete now. We bring up the Lakers so much because the fact of the matter is that we're at the end of LeBron James's career. He can't wait one more year. He needs moves to be made. And if the Spurs don't want to assume Russell Westbrook, and if Russell Westbrook doesn't want to come to San Antonio, that doesn't mean the Spurs can't be part of the trade. Maybe Westbrook goes someplace else. Maybe we assume certain players and picks, and the Lakers get to get rid of a contract. And it doesn't have to be just Russell Westbrook, but the fact of the matter is that that's what the Spurs are doing. They're just waiting. That's what I think anyway, that they're just waiting to see someone wanting to get rid of a bad contract. All the time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they're if they're sitting on that money, to facilitate the trade and make the numbers work for the Lakers to move Westbrook, they're going to get those draft picks. That's what they're coveting right now. So the Lakers will likely send them picks for helping out. The other thing too is simply this: a lot of the big name free agents are just gone. They re-signed with their team, or they went elsewhere. Like Kevin Durant stayed in Brooklyn after all this drama with him. He ended up staying in Brooklyn. Other big name free agents just stayed put, and the Spurs could have made a splash if teams were interested in coming to San Antonio. But Michael, we know historically big name free agents don't do that. So yeah, and could they be banking this money for next season? Look, nobody says they have to spend their money right now. They're not forced to. They could be waiting for next year's crop. But it just feels like a broken record, Michael. Haven't we been saying this for the last 2-3 years? Oh, next year's crop of free agents is going to be good, and nobody comes. Oh, no. Next year's free agency crop is going to be good, and nobody comes, Michael. I mean, is that just the way it is?
It's frustrating, right? I mean, to know that no one comes, or even with the cap space. I oftentimes say that the Spurs have to pay a small market tax on top of everything else because not only do they want to come here, if they're going to come here, they need to be overpaid to come here. So that's why things need to be done by trade and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is that you never know. You got to have that cap space because you never know. Yeah. And I know it's frustrating, but it wasn't that long ago that LaMarcus Aldridge was the prize free agent and he picked the Spurs. So it doesn't always happen, but it's happened before. So I guess when I take a look at what the Spurs are doing right now, can you imagine having a top 5 pick next year and $50 million in cap space? It's a good place to be, man. It just it facilitates certain trade possibilities to move up in the draft or move down in the draft or whatever the case may be. So it's not a bad thing to have that cap space. Just don't get your hopes up.
Yeah. So keep an eye on that. There could be All right. I mean, I will be very surprised if there are no more moves, whether that be the Westbrook facilitating a draft or just flipping players as the season goes on. So, I mean, Jakob Poeltl is still likely a candidate to be traded. Could they use some of the money to make a deal move? Yeah, they can. So they have options. And one of the big bullets in their gun to make a move is all that money they're sitting on. We're not done talking with Michael Jimenez. When we get back, we're going to dive into some Spurs news and notes, including if Jimenez will be going to the Alamodome game because the tickets are right around the corner. Will he be getting some for him and his family to enjoy the return to the Alamodome? We're back with Michael Jimenez right here on Locked On Spurs. He is with San Antonio Sports Star. He is the host of Halftime. He'll tell you all about that and much, much more later. Michael, I know you're short on time, but can I bother you for a little longer just to go over some news and notes we may have missed?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So the big game, perhaps the big highlight of next season, the return to the Alamodome, Spurs Warriors back at the old stomping grounds. Tickets are about to go on sale. So get this, Jimenez, they're going to be $10 tickets that you can buy at the Alamodome. You're limited to 5. They're called community tickets. It's about 2,500 they set aside. If you want to sit in the plaza, there's $79 tickets, excuse me. But basically, yeah, they go on sale very, very soon. I think next week or this week, Thursday, I believe. So will Jimenez be going?
More than likely, yes. More for the nostalgia than anything else. It's not because it's a great experience, because I know people look back at the Alamodome days and think to themselves, it wasn't that bad watching a game at the Alamodome.
It wasn't.
Yes, it was.
It really wasn't.
It was awful. It's bad basketball at the Dome. It's awful. Now,
the product on the court. I thought you meant just a seat on the court.
No. Just to go watch the game. I hated watching the game at the Dome.
Okay.
It was a bad experience, man. It's not as intimate as the AT&T Center and whatnot, but still, I'll go for the nostalgia. I'm glad the Spurs are doing that, to offering $10 tickets out there. They've got to do it. They've got to pack the Dome, because it'd be embarrassing if only 20,000 people showed up.
They want to break the record. The all-time record is held by the Bulls, I believe. They have the record for attendance. The capacity at the Dome is 65,000 plus. Man, that's asking for a lot. You think they'll do it?
Yeah, it'd be a weird record for the Spurs to have, right? I mean, that's just,
is that what we've come to, Jimenez? This is the highlight of the recent years.
That's exactly what I'm gonna say, dude. We break that record. We go across the street. We just start honking down Commerce, man, just like old days.
Well, if you want to go to see the much anticipated Spurs game at the Dome, tickets go on sale very, very soon. Go to Spurs.com for all your information, or just go to Kens5.com/Spurs. We've been talking about it, but we'll dive into it a little bit deeper. Josh Primo has been working out, and that is an understatement. First of all, as we mentioned earlier, Mike and I would love to be 19 years old again, pack on muscle overnight. So genes are definitely helping, and youth is helping Primo. But do you like this from him? Adding the bulk, adding the size.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, you don't think it's going to take away from his game?
Well, maybe it does, but it shows a commitment to the craft. I mean, that's basically what it is that he's out there, he's working out. We need these guys to bulk up, and it's so fluid the way that guards play. He can play the 1, he can play the 2. So putting on the size isn't that big of a deal. It might help his game, because it might prevent him from getting physically pushed around the court.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing, is that if he can be an intimidating presence or an imposing presence out there, I see nothing wrong with it. He looks great, man. He looks, that's a big body right there.
Yeah, and he just feels, like overnight. Last season, he was just a skinny little kid, and he really added size. Maybe he might be a more / switchable player now. Play the 2, maybe the 3, so that'll help me the 1. So yeah, if you want to see a photo of Primo just all ripped up like Hulk, go to Kens5.com/Spurs. In other Spurs news, Austin Spurs, they're having tryouts. If you think you have what it takes to make it to the G League /NBA, the Austin Spurs are going to have their walk-on event. And basically, yeah, you make it, you're in the NBA. Go to kinsfi.com/Spurs to check it out. And finally, because we got to let Mike go, there's fandom, Jimenez, and then there's fandom. Did you happen to catch a glimpse of this one fan? They made a shrine to Spurs legend Tim Duncan, but using like one of the most high-end action figures. So apparently there is this company called Enterbay. They have a license with the NBA to make hyper realistic figures of NBA players. And they have a legend series, and the Tim Duncan is part of that. So this guy got one, made a complete shrine, handmade Spurs championship banners, put the figure in the classic Tim Duncan pose where his arms are spread out as confetti's falling on him when he wins a title.
Yeah.
Handmade crafted NBA Larry O'Brien trophies to surround the Duncan shrine. Have you ever gone that far for your fandom of a player, whether it be NBA, NFL, or what have you?
No, never gone that far, but all of this is completely nerdy, and I'm here for it. I mean, more power to somebody needs a hobby, right? We all need a hobby. Some people it's playing cards, some people it's going to the gym, basketball, tennis, swimming, whatever. Somebody needs a hobby. This guy is apparently a wizard and probably goes to Michael's and Hobby Lobby every other weekend.
Yeah,
but
much.
No, man, the artistic skills that some people have are amazing, and I wish I had that in me. I can barely use scissors, dude. I mean,
you failed arts and craft class.
Yeah, I did well in government and English, but trying to make a turkey out of my hand or out of using paper plates was not it, man. It was never happening. Macaroni crafts never happened well with me.
If you want to see the video that this fan put up of his shrine to Tim Duncan, go to kinsfi.com/Spurs. Jimenez, again, we know you're short on time, but brag to us. What's going on over at halftime?
Oh, dude, halftime continues to evolve, man. 12-2, Monday through Friday. We're getting more and more coming in because the NFL season starts on September 8th, the 11th for the Cowboys. You've got college football getting into full swing this weekend. UTSA taking on 24th ranked Houston. So we're getting into the meat of the sporting world, the sporting season, if you will. Spurs start preseason in October, regular season mid-October. It's going to be a good time. At halftime, we do sports. We talk a lot about pop culture. We talk about nostalgic things. I'm getting nostalgic today about Cameron Diaz. And we have a lot of fun on the show. Basically, it's what guys talk about at the bar. It's sports, music, movies, streaming, girls, sex, all of that.
And where can they listen at?
94.1 FM, man, all over San Antonio, all over South Texas.
There you go. And by the way, kudos to Michael Jimenez for giving the all-time San Antonio-based film Cloak and Dagger an A-. So
yeah, you dragged it out of me, man. You dragged it out of me. It was going to be a B+ to an A-, and you tilted the scales.
So yeah, if you want to check out movie reviews and much more, check out Michael Jimenez on halftime over at San Antonio Sports Star. Thanks again for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. Now for your second listen, go check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022, an eight episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. The local team, experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, and Odyssey NFL Insiders all combining into one ultimate NFL preview. Search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. So for Michael Jimenez, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.